The lesson is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, verses 43 to 48. That's the context. I just want to ask you to bring your attention to one portion, a sentence in the midst of all of those. And the sentence reads, "She came behind Jesus and touched the bottom of his coat. At once, the flow of blood stopped." She came behind Jesus and touched the bottom of his coat. At once, the flow of blood stopped. The word of the Lord. When famous people come to a city, crowds will gather. We know this to be true, as when Pope Francis made his first journey to the United States as Pope, people traveled from far and near just to see him. Justin Bieber was scheduled a summer concert guest for the Today Show. It was reported that record numbers of fans camped out on the streets 2 to 3 days before the event just to see the young blonde tattooed singer. Wherever Jesus went, crowds followed him. Large crowds, enormous crowds, crowds. Everyone can get lost in a crowd, but there is an exception in the story before us today. A woman with a blood issue who wants one thing and one thing only: for the bleeding to stop. I want to talk to you today from the subject of personal touch. A few years ago, quite a few years ago, my wife and I visited New Orleans. We stayed in the French Quarters. I love the French Quarters. It's known for cooking all day and night, drinking, dancing, and music. I love the French Quarters. It's a place bustling with activity. People come from all parts of the world to experience the life and the culture of the quarters. While on a tour of the town and the outskirts of the city, our tour guide told us visitors, don't come here during Mardi Gras. The crowds are huge, thick, and out of control. People everywhere, drunk, sober, and some who don't know if they're one or the other. He further explained, if you stepped out of your hotel into the streets, the crowd would swallow you and take you right along with it. It doesn't matter where you intended to go, planned to go, wanted to go, the crowd takes you with it. You can't help but touch or be touched by someone. That's the personality of the crowd. Imagine being in a crowd and having no control over your space, touched and being touched, not knowing who it is that you have touched or who is touching you. The story of our principal character in the passage is included with the healing of a demon-possessed man in verses 26 through 39. 13 verses explain how this man lived, behaved, and was a disruption to the community. He is healed in spirit, soul, body, and in his mind. We read further in the narrative, we meet Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, coming to Jesus, begging him to come to his home to heal his dying daughter. It was his only daughter, and he was desperate to have Jesus to make her well. Jesus is interrupted en route to the ruler's home by this nameless, faceless, classless woman. We know that the demon-possessed man is a Gadarene. He is identified as such in verse 28. Jesus has a conversation with the demons possessing the man, this man who wore no clothes, lived in tombs. Jesus sees this man, and the demons see Jesus, and he commands the demons to depart, and the man is healed, delivered, and set free. As Jesus moves inland, the crowd is following him and continues to swell. Yet Jairus is able to negotiate the crowd so that he has a one-on-one personal conversation with Jesus, making his request for a house call and the healing of his only daughter, 12 years of age and dying. He is a ruler in his community, highly respected, and enjoys considerable privilege. What do you make of all of this? That a demon-possessed man positions himself at the shore when Jesus arrives to town. A ruler of the synagogue manages to get through a crowd unscathed, has a face-to-face personal contact with Jesus. Both of these men have a conversation with Jesus. Both of these men have a face-to-face contact with Jesus. Both of these men are able to ask for what they want and for what they need. But this woman is caught in between Jairus' request, the crowd, and Jesus making his way to the ruler's house before it is too late. What do you make of this? This woman with this blood disorder is not only sick, but she is restricted by the laws and the rules which govern her community, her culture, and their common beliefs. Her condition relegates her to obscurity. She is not allowed to be out in public, let alone hidden in a crowd. She is ceremonially unclean. And because of her illness, everything and everybody she touched would be unclean, according to Leviticus chapter 15. If she was out in the community, like the lepers would announce themselves, unclean, 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 unclean. What all would you have to say if you had to announce today to the public, she's also indigent? Luke describes for us her social economic status. She, at some time, had money, resources, and a support system that is now exhausted and depleted. She has no money, resources, they are all exhausted, and no one will come near her because the rules and the laws forbid it. My friends, she is not only bleeding physically, but emotionally, financially, socially, and spiritually. She is diseased, unclean, unsuitable, and prohibited as such to come to worship. Worse yet, the worshipers will not be seen going to her. Can you imagine bleeding and can't get help? Well, what's this woman's name? We don't know. The demon-possessed man is a Gadarean. Where is this woman from? We don't know. Jairus is a ruler, a man of privilege, power, and respect. He has status in the synagogue. Who does this woman belong to? We don't know. We don't know where she is from, her name, her ancestry, what community she lives in. She is nameless, faceless, classless, and invisible. She is sick, lonely, desperate, abandoned woman. It's the rules and the attitudes and thinking of the community that makes those who are bleeding and dying in need of help invisible. Yes, I've done it. You've done it too. We've taught others how to do it. We see someone who is not normal, sickly, afflicted, diseased, handicapped, disabled. We are told, look away, act like you don't see them, walk the other way, walk faster, run through the light, put your wipers on so you don't have to give them money for washing your windshield. Then there are those socially conscious individuals who believe if I give you a quarter, a nickel, a dime, and some pennies, I would have at least done something. I have at least acknowledged you, yet you are left bleeding. I think what disturbs me most is that everything she tried didn't work. Every physician she saw made her worse. She spent all her money for healing and a remedy and was no better but grew worse. She tried everything failed, and is there anything left for her to yet try? Is there anyone that she has not seen that can help? Is there one more place she can go that she hasn't been to stop the bleeding? 12 years of uncontrollable bleeding, 12 years of living in obscurity, 12 years of announcing that you are unclean, 12 years of avoiding people and people avoiding you, growing weak, feeble, and frail. What else is there left for her to do? You know, when you are sick and symptoms of your disease don't reveal itself, you can negotiate getting around people. You can develop whatever story you want to tell and tell them. Only you really know what's going on. Her sickness was not a secret. Wherever she went, there was evidence that she had been there. There are many who are bleeding still, some in silence and some in public. You need help and you want to be delivered, but the rules and the laws prohibit you from getting help. You are ignored and relegated to a place of obscurity. You have to hide. If you show up, you have to tell everybody what's wrong with you. Even when you tell them, they either give you a quarter, a dollar, a nickel, a dime, or some. Or they just can't help you at all. Have you been there? Have you done that? Have you lived in this woman's experience? There's not a day in the week that we don't hear of some tragedy or misfortune coming to a family, a neighborhood, or a city. Desperate people are doing desperate things because they are bleeding and don't know how to make it stop. The story takes a turn that makes me hopeful. She, like the demon-possessed man and Jairus, hear that Jesus is coming to town. In her mind, she was desperate and was willing to take desperate measures, desperate enough to break the rules. Can you say to somebody, if you want to be delivered, you might have to break some rules? You sound scared, so go the other way. Maybe you'll have a little bit more faith. Just say to them, if you want to get delivered, you might have to break some rules. Desperate enough to crawl and not be seen. Desperate to swallow the dust stirred by the crowd, to be stepped on, pushed over, and out of the way. Imagine negotiating your way between people's feet and their animals with one thing in mind: just stop the bleeding. The conflict is in this narrative, is her touching Jesus. She is not supposed to be out in public and not touch a man. It's against the rules. It's against the law. She didn't yell, unclean, unclean, coming through, unclean, unclean. She didn't have a place where she could meet Jesus and ask for what she needed and for what she wanted. She has no influence. She has no privilege or position of respect. Her intentions are get in, touch the strings on the bottom of his garment, stop the bleeding, and get away without being noticed. I feel my happy coming. She is somewhere, somewhat lost in the crowd, and wherever the crowd went, she had no choice but to be taken with it. Yet she is focused, goal-directed, task-oriented, and determined that she must see Jesus so that the bleeding can stop. The crowd would have preserved her anonymity, but for one factor. When you touch Jesus, when she touched Jesus, she drew from him everything that she couldn't get anywhere else. She drew from him what money could never buy nor provide. She drew from him what no physician could provide or prescribe. She touched Jesus. It was not to him the pushing and the shoving of a dense, enormous crowd. It was the touch of someone who was bleeding, and the bleeding had stopped. You know that Jesus was surrounded by some of the smartest and the brightest, most intelligent group of men that he could have selected. These men witnessed Jesus talk to and cast out the demons from the possessed man. Could he not also determine the difference between a push and a shove in a crowd, and a touch that drew virtue, strength, and healing from him? Yes, the smart ones are still among us today, who cannot tell the difference between an emotionally charged crowd and the supernatural move of God. They even had an answer for Jesus. Who touched you? All these people around you? How can you ask such a question? Everybody is touching you, Jesus. But Jesus, however, enlightens the smart ones. Somebody touched me, and power went out of me. Whoever touched me, something went out of me, and something has happened for them. How do we know this? Luke reports, immediately the bleeding stopped. Can you say to somebody, make your touch personal? Beloveds, we are still negotiating crowds. They may not be pushing and shoving you, but sometimes the crowd sits in the pew with you. They have determined that ain't nobody on this row is going to jump up and down and holler and clap their hands and open their mouths. Because after all, we need to be sophisticated and dignified. We need to be contemplative and meditative in the presence of the Lord. Well, that'll work for you because you don't want anything. But if you've lived in my crazy, if you have lived in my confusion, if you have stepped into my trouble, if you have bled emotionally and psychologically and spiritually and mentally, then you know that I'm desperate enough to open my mouth and to raise my hands until I touch him with my praise. Because once I touch him, it's impossible for me to touch him and he don't touch me back. How desperate are you? How desperate are you? Are you desperate enough to get past your week? Are you desperate enough to get past the stairs? Are you desperate enough to get past the gossip? Are you desperate enough to get past the chitter chatter? Are you desperate enough to get past people? Are you goal oriented and task focused? Are you here today not to be one in the number, but to be one in the number that touches Jesus until something happens? Say it. Say it. Every day we hear something about somebody's child. Every day we see something about somebody's home. Every day we hear about people going to sleep and not waking up. We hear about people walking down the street and a bullet meets them and a robber meets them. When we sing that song, we don't sing it because it's pretty. Tragedies are commonplace. All kinds of diseases. People are slipping away. The economy is down. People can't get enough pay. But as for me, all I can say is thank you for all you've done for me. I'm desperate
I'm desperate. I'm desperate. Folks without homes, people out in the street, and the drug habits, some say, they just can't beat. Mothers and robbers, no place seems to be safe, but you've been my protection every step of the way. I just want to say thank you for all you've done for me. I'm desperate to thank him for what I haven't seen. I'm desperate to thank him for what I haven't touched. I'm desperate to thank him for what I haven't felt, because we walk by faith and not by sight. We count those things that be not as though it was already. Are you desperate enough to walk by faith? Are you desperate enough to count those things that be not as though they were already? Are you desperate enough to believe God for the hard thing? Desperate enough to touch him and be made whole? Say yes. Say yes. Say yes. Now this nameless, classless woman has been found out. She was used to hiding, being ignored, obscured, but her touching Jesus has exposed her. She has much with which to be concerned. Bleeding folk don't come out in public without announcing themselves. Women in her culture didn't have contact with men. Jesus may be somewhat angry with her because she is unclean, and her touching him makes him unclean according to the rules. But how many of you know that Jesus breaks the rules? That Jesus breaks the rules. Say yes. Say yes. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Nobody knows this woman who has interrupted Jesus, who is on his way to Jairus' house to heal his daughter. Jairus is an important figure in the community. He's privileged, respected, and he is not interrupted by a faceless, nameless, classless people. Get ready for an interruption. Get ready for an interruption. Get ready for God to pour himself out and to overflow in your space. Get ready for your disease to be interrupted. Get ready for your disorder to be interrupted. Get ready for your past to be interrupted. The cycle that you have been circling in, get ready for the cycle to be broken. It's a touch, a personal touch. Say it. Jesus, his reaction is not at all what she anticipated. She tells a story to Jesus, and what we hear next is a compassionate, merciful, and full expression of grace. Jesus tells this woman, go ahead, you can be happy. You have all the right to be cheerful. Having suffered with no remedy for 12 years, you can be of good cheer. Yes, friends, that's what happens when you touch Jesus. He makes you happy. He gives you joy. He takes away the clouds, the gloom and the darkness, and the sadness that comes with bleeding. He doesn't do it in secret, but for all to see. Then Jesus tells this woman, it's not what you did that healed you, but what you believed that could heal you. Having tried everything, having seen everybody, having experienced failure and disappointment, you still believed that the bleeding could be stopped. Help me, Jesus. My brothers and sisters, don't lose heart. Don't lose faith. And don't lose hope. Don't give up until your miracle happens. Help me preach a little bit. Can you bother the people around you and encourage them and tell them don't give up till your miracle happens? Can you turn to somebody else and tell them don't give up till your miracle happens? Find somebody else and say to them don't give up till your miracle happens. Find one more somebody and tell them don't give up until your miracle happens. Touch yourself and say, self, it's too early to quit. Can't quit till the miracle happens. Talk to yourself again and say, self, it's too early to quit. Don't give up till your miracle happens. Talk to yourself again and say, self, it's too early to quit. 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 Don't give up till your miracle happens. Till your miracle happens. Till your miracle happens. Seal it with a praise. Your bleeding can stop. Your bleeding will stop. Just don't lose hope and don't lose faith. Touch him and be made whole. Lastly, Jesus says to this woman, go in peace. Imagine having suffered, struggled, and trying everything and it failing him, and being told to go in peace after being rejected, ostracized. Do you know what Jesus is saying? The bleeding has stopped. You will never have to deal with this again. Say amen. Your shame has been removed. Say amen. And you'll never have to be ashamed again. You have struggled and your struggle has now come to an end. You have lived with it and lived in failure. And you will never have to deal with failure again. Oh yes. Jesus never fails. Jesus never fails. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but Jesus, he never fails. Listen to me while I preach to me. You can't go by circumstances, because circumstances have been created to give God opportunity to do the hard thing, to do the impossible thing. When things start falling apart, watch how God puts them back together again. He don't use super glue and he don't use helmet glue, but he speaks to the things that have been destroyed and he calls it back to life. I find something so interesting in the scriptures. We avoid Ash Wednesday because we're too proud for folk to see dirt on our foreheads. But yet in the scriptures, we see God calling miracles from stirring the ashes. I want to say to you today, if all you have is ashes left over, start stirring your ashes, because God works miracles from leftovers. God works miracles out of destruction. God works miracles out of devastation. When you feel hopeless and helpless and powerless to help yourself, when the enemy comes in like a flood, God will lift up a standard against them. Get ready. God's getting ready to do the unusual, the unexpected, the unplanned for, the unasked for, the unusual, the unexpected, the unplanned for, the unusual, the unexpected, the unplanned for, the unasked for. Get ready.
like you announced being unclean, you need to go back in that same spot and start announcing, look what the Lord has done. I should be dead by now. Look what the Lord has done. You left me for dying, but a resurrection came. You asked for healing, but he brought a resurrection. Look what the Lord has done. Say yes. A woman who crawls in can now walk out of the crowd. Ooh, I want to dance. Some of you don't get it, and church is over. The whole goal and objective of coming here is to come in one way. I can't work, y'all. Is to come in one way and go out another. I'm going to tell you one more time. The whole goal and the objective of coming here, pressing your way, pushing your way around folks, things, people, places, and things, is to come in here one way and to go out another. If this was a synagogue, every synagogue has many doors. Everybody comes in one way. But when the service is over, all the doors open because you go out another way. I hope I'm helping you. But the door you came in is not the one God opened for your deliverance. Because the door he opens has blessings behind it. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. Say yes! I want to encourage somebody here today. Someone who's been bleeding, hiding, suffering in silence, close to dying. Your bleeding can stop today. Take a leap of faith with me. Help me preach it quick. Preach in your space and tell them you're bleeding to stop. You're bleeding. You're bleeding to stop. You're bleeding. You're bleeding to stop. Today is stop. Your faith will heal you, deliver you, and make you whole. Perhaps you're bleeding with disappointment, bleeding with frustration, failure, depression, sickness, or disease. I want you to know your bleeding can stop. Jesus is here right now to heal you, to make you whole, to bring you happiness, to bring you joy, and to give you peace. Touch him. Be made whole. Be made whole. Be made whole. Be made whole. Be healed. Be delivered. Be set free. I speak it to you today. Be healed. Be delivered. Be set free. I command you, be healed. Be delivered. Be set free. And it is so. And it is so. And it is so. Clap your hands, open your mouth. Open your mouth and clap your hands. Clap your hands and open your mouth. Slap the devil real good. Tell him you thought you had me, but I got away. I touched him before you touched me. Hallelujah. 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 speak into your lives, those of you who've been living under a cloud, in the dark, in depression. Those of you who've tried to die but couldn't. Your cloud is passing over. You're coming out of the darkness. And I'm saying to you today, when the clouds start parting, start walking towards the light. Walk in the light. Walk towards the light. Stand in the light. It's a beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright. Shine all around me by day and by night. Jesus is the light of the world. Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the ends of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me. Lead me. He's leading you. Follow him. Stepping into light at first is often startling. Your eyes have to adjust to it. And there's this tendency to go back into the dark. But don't go back into dark, because darkness will always be dark. But go towards the light. It's bright, it's shining, it's interruptive, it's intrusive. But your miracle and your blessing is in that light. Let the miracle intrude on your disorder and make you every whit whole. Every whit whole. Thoughts of things behind you. People in your past. God help me. God help me. Sometimes you don't know what people did to you until you get way past it. And you realize what they did, what they said, how they treated you. You didn't know just how bad it was until you got out of it. There's often a piece of you that says, if they were here right about now, I would do this, I would do that, I would say the other. They're not coming back. And if they were here, and if they are here, the likelihood that they would own their wrong is almost null and void. You don't need to make yourself mad again. You don't. But here's what you do need to be grateful for. With all that they did and all that they said and how they treated you, it should have killed you. But God didn't let it take you out. He caused it to propel you. And you are what you are who you are, you all that you are, because of your haters and because of your enemies. They pushed you towards the light. Beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright. Shine all around me by day and by night. Jesus, he's the light of the world. He's the light of the world. There was a song that was popular for quite a few years. It was sung at everybody's wedding. You light up my life. What's the rest of it? You give me hope, carry on. You light up my day and fill my nights. Let him light up your life. Don't keep pulling the shade, pulling the curtains. They make curtains now that they black out. Or they may be snow white on the front, but if you just pull them together, they keep all the light out. Pull the curtains back. Pull the blinds up. Let the light shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let your pain go. Let it shine. Let the painful people who crossed your path, let them go. Let the light shine. Folk who hurt you really helped you. Didn't make sense then, but it's working out for you. Excel beyond the hurt. Go beyond the pain. Join hands all across